Sophie Cunningham has had enough, and this time she is not whispering it behind closed doors. On the latest episode of her podcast, the Indiana Fever guard tore into the WNBA over what happened to Caitlin Clark, and she did not soften a single syllable. The flashpoint was a hit from Alyssa Thomas of the Phoenix Mercury, a play that lit up social media overnight and had fans demanding answers by morning. Sophie's message to Thomas was blunt and unmistakable. "You are all over the news, and it is not a good look. So what actually went down, and why is one of the most outspoken players in the league pointing the finger straight at the commissioner's office? Let's get into it." Here is the thing Sophie admitted right away. She says she did not see the hit happen in real time. None of her teammates caught it live either, and she swears that if any of them had seen it, they would have had Clark's back on the spot. But that is almost the smaller story. The bigger story, in Sophie's words, is that this kind of thing happens to Caitlin Clark in what feels like every single game, and the league and the referees do nothing about it. They turn a blind eye. They act like they cannot even see it. And when the league finally did respond to the Thomas hit, the punishment was a single-game suspension. Sophie called that a joke. In her view, it should have been 5 to 7 games at the absolute minimum. And she said so on a podcast where she has already been fined before for speaking her mind, which tells you she knew exactly what she was risking by saying it again. To Sophie, a one-game slap on the wrist is not just lenient, it is insulting, because it sends a message that you can take a shot at the face of the league and barely miss a beat. Then she described what she actually saw on the tape, a cheap shot toward Clark's throat, and she put it plainly. If a player did that to one of her own teammates, she would be furious. So why, she asked, is the reaction so muted when it happens to the biggest name the sport has ever produced? That question is where Sophie turned her attention to the very top, and she named names. Cathy Engelbert, the WNBA commissioner. Sophie basically asked, "Where are you?" She pointed out that Engelbert has been awfully quiet ever since the collective bargaining drama, the same stretch where Napheesa Collier publicly ripped into the league's leadership. Sophie's framing was almost taunting. "Are you okay, Cathy? Where have you been?" Because from where she is standing, the commissioner is doing a poor job of protecting the league's brightest star. And Sophie made it clear she is not letting her off the hook. And then came the moment that really set people off. The league dropped a 30-year commemorative poster celebrating the history of the WNBA. Sophie Cunningham is on it. Caitlin Clark is not. And here is why people respect Sophie in this moment, even people who normally roll their eyes at her. She did not puff her chest out and act flattered. She said the quiet part out loud. "Why on earth would you put me on this poster and leave off Caitlin Clark?" She basically called it dumb to her own face, and she refused to be used as a pawn for a decision she thinks makes no sense. And the fans, they were up in arms, watching Clark get knocked around one night, then watching the league leave her off a celebration of its own history the next, painted a picture that a lot of people found impossible to ignore. Sophie even floated the uncomfortable theory that has been swirling around for a while now, that maybe, just maybe, there is something personal going on, that Clark has become a bigger face than anyone the WNBA has ever had, and that for some reason she is not being handed the platform a star like that usually gets. Sophie called it weird. She called it bizarre. She called it a joke, and she is not wrong that it looks strange from the outside. Think about who did make that poster. Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, Candace Parker. Legends, every one of them, no argument there. But as Sophie pointed out, none of those names is the reason arenas are suddenly selling out. None of them is the reason the ratings exploded. None of them brought the eyeballs, the attention, and the money, the way Caitlin Clark has. So leaving her off, in Sophie's eyes, is not just an oversight. It is petty, it is disrespectful, and it makes no sense for a league that keeps insisting it wants to grow. If they were smart, she argued, they would market the daylights out of their biggest draws. Instead, they keep doing the exact opposite. Now, you cannot talk about Sophie Cunningham this week without talking about the meme, because while all of this was unfolding, Sophie became the most viral image on the internet for something that, by her own admission, was almost nothing. It started with a double technical foul, one that Sophie herself called the weakest tech she has ever gotten in her life. From what she described, another player committed the extra contact, but Caitlin Clark got hit with a tech anyway. And Sophie could not understand why Clark got one while the other player walked away clean. So she walked over to the referee, and she did not scream. She did not curse. She just pointed. That is it. A look and a finger. The referee snapped back. "Do not you point at me?" And Sophie says she did not say a single word in return. And that silent little gesture turned into what she described as a meme, with over 100 million views, the most viral image online that morning, with people making shirts overnight. Sophie was the first to laugh at it and admit it was kind of dumb, but she also nailed why it worked. Everyone already knows she is a bit of an instigator, a known trash talker. So when it was her doing the pointing, it just hit different. And the fact that she never said a word made it even better. A face and a point, and the entire internet ran with it. But underneath the jokes, Sophie's point about Caitlin Clark is deadly serious, and it did not start this season. According to the commentary around her remarks, the resentment toward Clark was bubbling before she ever played a professional minute. Names like Diana Taurasi, Lexi Brown, and Cheryl Swoops were brought up as voices who seemed less than thrilled about the hype before she had even arrived. And once she got to the league, the treatment, the hard fouls, the lack of protection only seemed to intensify. Sophie even gestured at problems closer to home, suggesting that some of the trouble has come from within Clark's own orbit, pointing toward figures connected to the organization itself. Whether you buy every single piece of that or not, the through line is impossible to miss. A generational talent walked into this league, brought a tidal wave of brand new fans with her, and instead of being protected and celebrated, she keeps getting hit, keeps getting left off the posters, and keeps getting treated like an afterthought by the very people who should be building statues in her honor. That is the case Sophie Cunningham laid out, and that is exactly why it struck such a nerve. She did not do it with a press release or a carefully worded statement. She did it on her own podcast, with her own name attached, knowing she might get fined. When your single biggest star is getting elbowed, opponents who hit her get a slap on the wrist, and your league leaves her off its own anniversary poster, what exactly are you protecting? Sophie Cunningham clearly decided the answer was not good enough. Shout out to her for saying out loud what a whole lot of fans have been shouting at their screens for 2 seasons now. Drop a comment and let me know where you land on this one, because something tells me you have got some thoughts.